Hello everyone, it's False Promise, and without further ado, let's begin the only Augmentation Evoker Soul Shuffle guide you will need in Season 3 Dragonflight. Stat graph for Augmentation is Haste vs Master Crit. Although it's important to note that Aug is one of the few specs that benefits from all stats quite well, so there is no point of going over 30 verse or Haste, as diminishing returns will kick in and you would benefit more from Master at that point. There will definitely be people who play without tier set, as it forces you to play Pre-Science, which is not the best spell, as it increases crit by only 6%, which is effectively 3% damage on average, which does sound quite pathetic, because of the fact that you would mostly use it outside Even Might, and it's instant cast, and you can still cast it when you are kicked on Volcanic. It's pretty much a replacement for Azure Strike in your rotation. You have about 70k DPS, Pre-Science will give you about extra 2k DPS. With the 2 set, it will last approximately 22 seconds on average, which is extra 45k damage from one Pre-Science use. Azure Strike, on the other hand, does about 20k damage without Even Might, but it also can hit 2 targets in slow. So overall, my opinion that Pre-Science is not a bad ability. I will run the 4 set because I think the buffs outweigh the stat loss, but the 2 set is quite bad, and even 4 set is definitely not mandatory, and I'm sure many people will not be running it. Last note about the tier set though, I will be running it with the head, shoulders, legs, and hands, as I think stats on the chest are quite bad. With that said, there is no haste versus chest for the conquest, so you're better off crafting a haste versus conquest piece with Trophy of Conquest that was dropped from the first PvP quest. Talking about gear for the embellishments, I by far like Furious Boots and the Spore Cloak, because for the inferior boots, it's on a 30-second cooldown for the buff, which nicely lines up with our rotation. And for the Spore Cloak, it's one of the best defensive embellishments, and you get swapped or even trained quite often as Augmentation, so you will make a great use out of it. But those two are definitely not mandatory, and going for example for the Statue of Foreseen Power, aka Precog, is very much viable. Just in my opinion, fake casting on Aug is very hard to utilize, and you either press Obsidian Scales or just soak on Fire or Nature's Cool. For the enchantments, max out speed, Waking Stats for the chest, Frozen Spell Thread for the legs, all the default stuff for all DPS right now. For the gems and ring enchants, just try to compensate for that 30-30 versus haste and then go for mastery, as I said earlier. So depending on which point of the season you're watching this video at, this advice may change. But at the moment of the first week of the season, I went for haste versus gems and haste rings, as it's important to have 30 haste to keep up Even Might with eruptions, but having more won't actually give you that much, because you'll just not have enough essence. For the talents, those I'd say are actually mandatory, but from the flex talents, there are a couple noteworthy ones. I run Fortune of the Mountain only against double melee, but if you play Seismic Slam, having Fortune of the Mountain is absolutely mandatory. It's quite good if you can allow yourself to be close to your enemies, and in general, if you don't have any stuns on the team, you will have a great use of Seismic Slam. Source of Magic is good if you think it will be a long game and you have a Disc Priest or Holy Paladin. As from my experience, those are the only two healers that actually run out of mana before the dampening becomes unhealable. However, I always play Source of Magic because, in my opinion, that's the easiest way to get to a Pressing Roar, which is quite mandatory to have. Time Spiral gives you almost permanent hover if you time skip fully, but permanent hover is not always useful, so depending on if you need it or not, you cannot play this talent in some situations. Inherent resistance is just numerically worse than Attuned Dream against casters who usually don't have MS effects, but it can be used to get to a pressing roar if you don't want to play Source of Magic, so it's definitely viable. Reactive Hide is very much OP, it just doesn't work against 2 range, so in some situations it will be absolutely useless, so remove it when it is. Today Tomorrow is very good, but if you play Pre-Science, you actually have nothing to drop to play it. Interwoven Threads is definitely viable against Shamans, for example, with 12-second kick cooldown, or just when there are too many kicks to actually use time skip without wasting Obsidian Scales for not being able to get interrupted, which doesn't feel too good sometimes. For PvP talents, Born in Flames is mandatory in any situation, it just gives you way too much. Obsidian Metal is played against the teams where the enemy has more than one kick, which actually feels like always in this meta. Nullifying Shroud is good against stuns, like for example DH, DK, Warriors, Windwalkers, and Druids with their Cyclones. Being CC'd on Even Might is quite bad because you won't be able to deal actually any damage in like next 30 seconds, and Nullifying Shroud really helps with the opener. You just press it in the very beginning, and you don't really have to worry about what happens in the opener. You just have so much more tempo. Unburdened Flight helps against double melee, however, only if you're the kill target. Otherwise, if you're playing with something like Elishami, it may not be the best idea to play it. You can play something a bit more useful. Scorching Flames is mainly against Resto Druids and Mistweavers, as you can't hold it to purge important buffs the way you do with Purge, because you need Fire Breath to extend Even Might on cooldown, as it's a major part of your damage. Dream Projection is very good to get your healer out of CC against Paladins, Mages, Priests, Hunters if they don't play Diamond Dice, although it actually feels like they always play it against me, and Destra and Demo Warlocks. Actually, don't play it against Aphilox, you will just most likely kill yourself. In general, Dream Protection is very strong as it heals so much, and actually heals as much as some healers' defensive cooldowns. And you can play it even if you're not against the listed classes, it's just the meta actually forces you to play Nullifying Shroud and Obsidian Metal so often that I don't play Dream Projection as often as I wish I would. Actually, Aug has a lot of very strong PvP talents like Swoop Up, Divide and Conquer, or Time Stop. However, in solo shuffle environment, those just not be used to their full potential due to a lack of communication. Your standard rotation is Even Might into Fire Breath to extend it and then get a buff for extra fire damage. Then Upheaval to extend the duration of Even Might again. Use Eruption once, so the essence starts regenerating, and then go for consuming Born in Flame stacks to get essence burst. And then just cast Eruption until you're out of essence, and then leaving Flames or Asher Strike to try to get the essence back. That's about it. Most of the time, you either hover after you use the empowered spells or Obsidian Scale before you use your Even Might, so you don't get kicked if you're targeted. Your big burst is just everything the same, but use Breath of Eons after you use Even Might, and most of the time tip the scale Fire Breath, so the burst goes down faster. You can also combo a Pressing Roar with Breath of Eons, or you can hold a Pressing Roar for a 9-second sleep on the healer. That just depends on how much CC on the healer you have after your main burst. A lot of times you want to combo Breath of Eons with your Landslide so you're hitting multiple targets while flying, but keep in mind that if you fly a high distance, the animation will be like extremely long. So don't bother going for a couple targets and just save the landslide for later. Keep in mind though, Mistweavers will almost always use Restoral into your Breath of Eons, so try to either CC or preferably kick them before using it. Fire Breath should be cast at Empower level 1 always, unless you can actually kill someone with it at level 2 or 3, or unless you're using Scorching Flames against Druids, when you would usually use it at level 2 against one target and then at level 1 against two targets, so you don't get silenced back. If a Druid doesn't run Reactive Raisin, I always try to empower level 2 or 3 because that will deal immense pain to them. But that happens quite rarely. Almost every druid runs it against evokers. Sometimes, if you're confident you can hit more than one target with upheaval, you can empower it to level 2, but it doesn't worth it if you have to empower it to level 3 to hit multiple targets. This rotation nicely lines up on a 30-second cooldown, so it suggests not to use Even Might or Empower spells out of this sequence. Do not desynchronize it. Sometimes you will not be able to cast 10 eruptions in 30 seconds. Actually, usually you won't be able to cast 10 eruptions in 30 seconds. So you wanna either cast a couple extra eruptions out of your main damage sequence, or just wait a couple extra seconds to wait until your upheaval comes off cooldown so you can actually use all the spells together to max out your damage. But what do you do out of your main damage sequence? Well, your damage is so low out of rotation that unless your other DPS has some major offensive cooldown going on, the enemy healer is just likely to top everyone back on to full health before you have Even Might again. Your main options are Time Skip to get Even Might back on instantly. Refresh your buffs as Blistering Scales and Pre-Science. CC with Sleep, Landslide, Racial Knockbacks, or even just slow with Azure Strike as the slow is actually quite huge. And finally, you can heal. You actually heal quite a lot. It's just your mana pool is quite small, so be careful with it. You don't want to run out of mana and not being able to Living Flame or DPS. If you were off healing, the most efficient way would be something like Verdant, Living Flame, Emerald Blossom, Living Flame. So use the Ancient Flame Talent to its full potential. Usually you would time skip after the second Even Might, as the first one will be extended by Breath of Eons. But don't hesitate to hold it until the third if your rescue and future Rising Flames and maybe some of PvP talents as Dream Protection are not yet on cooldown. Some tips on how to use your utility. You should hold Rising Flames and Rescue for when your healer is in CC, because it's very rarely that somebody will actually be able to cross CC you in solo shuffle. So you will be able to save your teammate, and unless somebody is like 100% dying when your healer is out of CC, hold it for only when your healer is crowd controlled. The other one is with rescue, try to position yourself so your teammate ends up being behind the pillar, so you're line of sighting the enemy, so they cannot reconnect their damage instantly. Because if your healer is CC'd, and you line of sight your healer, that's not a huge deal. That's it for today. Please like this video if you like it. I will be playing some Resto Druid and Mistweaver Monk, so subscribe if you don't want to miss those videos. And if you have any questions, I will be reading the comments. I will start streaming, so join my streams on Twitch, and peace to you people.